Don Shula's impact on South Florida. Can you sort of put that into perspective for us this morning?
Sure. He was a god from another time, another era, and we were sort of a beach town for old people. Miami wasn't what it was today. Football wasn't what it was today, and he ended up helping make football a bigger thing here. An expressway in his name still runs through Miami because he was one of the very first things that left an imprint from this region. It's why the list in South Florida of the icons is Don Shula, Pat Riley, Dwayne Wade, Dan Marino. That's the list. Maybe Jimmy Johnson is somewhere on it, but as well because of what he did at the University of Miami. But you're talking about a coach, 2 losing seasons from among 33. Bill Belichick still has to go 4 or 5 seasons. Bill Belichick, before catching him, it was just a quainter time in America. And what he also did is not just represent Miami to the nation, which would have been one thing, but do so as a picture of leadership and class, an aura of how to manage yourself, how to conduct yourself when you represent a sports team, when you represent a region.
And as you mentioned, his accomplishments, he had the back-to-back championships in the 70s when Miami was still finding itself and becoming Miami as we know it today. And most stunningly, what should we remember and appreciate about the NFL's only perfect season, 17-0 in 1972, and his starting quarterback is injured in week 5 of that season?
Well, it's funny, Hannah, because very often in sports, because it could be such a cruel ecosystem, such a cutthroat ecosystem, we don't allow people to age well around here. So that 1972 team is viewed with some mockery as a bunch of old guys rejoicing over something that's in the distant past whenever a team loses, or the last undefeated team loses every season, and the Dolphins click glasses in celebration. But why wouldn't they be proud of that? Why wouldn't they be proud of the fact that they are the only ones to do something in America's most popular sport? And this was their leader. And so I understand, on the radio the other day, I was talking to some of our producers, Chris and Billy, and they said something like, "Who the hell is Dan Marino?" when talking about Tua and what number Tua should wear with the Miami Dolphins. If that's the kind of disconnect you have between young people and even Dan Marino, you can imagine what it's like to go even 20 years before that, back to 1972. But he merits our respect. Football genuflects today, and Miami genuflects today in response to a man who really was a king here in South Florida.
And 4 decades after that accomplishment, so think about it, 40 years later, President Barack Obama actually hosted those 1972 Dolphins at the White House. It's funny that you're talking about bridging eras. We've done a lot of that lately with Michael Jordan, right, as young people have come to appreciate who he was and what he accomplished. Where do you see Don Shula's legacy in the coaches of today, a guy who really got his first opportunity in Baltimore at age 33?
Well, it is much the same, Hannah, I would say, as that 1972 team. For example, that team was undefeated, but rarely do you hear that talked about as the greatest of all time. We'll point to any number of other teams, including that Patriots team that didn't even finish undefeated, to say that was a better football team. So Bill Belichick may indeed be a better coach than Don Shula. Certainly, we would look at it from this time and what he's done recently in the modern age with a salary cap that legislates equality and allows free agency. And you can make the argument that Bill Belichick is better than Don Shula. But what? The 4th best coach ever? The 3rd best coach ever? Coach of the what? 4th best team ever? 3rd best team ever? We can sit here and we can split hairs, but when you go 2 losing seasons in 33 years, when you go from being a coach who coached Bob Greasy during a different time, and I think Bob Greasy had like 7 passes in one of those Super Bowls, or 9 in the other. Like, it was a different time in football. To be able to adapt to Dan Marino's playing style later in his career, he was a model for what it is that being a leader in sports should look like, being able to change your dinosaur dictator ways when it's necessitated, when you have to change with the time, and always evolving in a way that kept him usually on the right side of the scoreboard.
I mean, you look back to that time when Joe Robbie wanted him, and essentially it was a time of negotiations that happened really right around the merger. The merger wasn't completed yet, and Miami ended up having to give Baltimore a first-round draft pick because of that and what we might consider today as some form of tampering. But when you look at modern-day Miami and the Dolphins of today, what could they continue to learn from the legacy of Don Shula, who really put Miami as a sports city on the map?
He never embarrassed the organization. In fact, what the Dolphins have done in the last 2 decades is sort of desecrate what it is that he's built. They've become a regional team instead of a national team. The only time they're in the national news is when Richie Incognito is bullying a teammate, or an offensive line coach is, snorting a white powder and sending it to an exotic dancer in Las Vegas. So they really besmirched what it is that he did in terms of winning and excellence. But consider this. He didn't have bad public moments, Hannah. Like, this is a man who represented this organization with a class that they've done very little in the last 20 years, with all the mercenaries who have run through here. Jimmy Johnson, Nick Saban, Bill Parcells, all those guys feel like rent-a-car salesmen compared to what it is that this guy did with his career. And I say that as a huge admirer of Jimmy Johnson. But in terms of longevity and class and what it is that he permeated, he was from a different time in Miami, and he represented Miami, I would say, cleaner than Miami, which can be a dirty city, deserved to be represented.